ProQuest Season 3 here in Portland, Oregon, USA had 3 events, and today's guest was at the final table of each of those events, ultimately taking down 2 of them. So today we're sitting down with Brute Extraordinaire Nathan Dollman to learn about all things Rhinar. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks, and welcome back to a very special session of Go Again, a fabulous cast where we're here talking with Nathan Dollman, who absolutely brutalized Portland during this last ProQuest season. How are we doing today, sir?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's back to work and all that, but thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I know there's a lot of people very excited to hear about your ProQuest season. So, as I implied, you did very well brutalizing people, right? So why don't you walk us through your ProQuest season kind of at a glance?
Yeah, so I went to 4. I did the little Pacific Northwest circuit, I guess you can call it. Started at Fable Hobby, where I ended up getting 2nd place to Josh, actually, on Icelander. Then we went ahead and went to Gone Guy, your store, where I managed to close that one out. Got a concession at the end, though, but hit top tables again. And then we kind of worked out a concession towards the end there. And then I'm Fab Foundry, ProQuest, my team's home store. There, hit top tables again because I already had the PTI, right? We just had, there's really no other choice but to let's duke it out for the gold foil. I managed to close that game out against a Briar player, kind of closing another ProQuest under my belt. And then I went up to Mr. Bill's to face the Seattleans and the Canadians, right? I hit top 8 there. I was 2nd seat, only losing 1 game out of the 7 games. And then I ended up pairing up with one of my friends who I paired up with several times. So I conceded to him to give him a chance at the PTI. Mm-hmm. No real reason for me to knock him out, aside from, I guess, the gold foil, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. So, that's a pretty impressive season. 4 events, 4 top 8s, 2 wins. Yeah. That's a pretty good record. Yeah. So, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So, before we kind of get into the Brute chat, I'd like to know, who are you? And sorry, I said that like aggressive, like who are you? No, like, let us know who you are, kind of your background, who you play with, and yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Nathan. I started the game around Monarch, right? So towards the tail end of it. So I just went into a game store. I moved up to Washington, was looking for like a social circle. And honestly was just trying to buy a board game when the guy behind the counter talked me into playing Flesh and Blood. It's my first ever TCG, so I started off on Levia. That was a mistake, but I love Levia so much. So it's a very competitive area, so I just got, beat up for like 2 months. Really just getting crushed until I finally closed one out. And then, from there, that kind of competitive spirit has stuck with me. So I've just been kind of trying to get better and better, and ended up joining Team Foundry at some point pretty recently. And, I'm just trying to hone in on my skills in the game and take down a major event. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's a great place to shout out Travis over at Fab Foundry. I know you're on Team Foundry. They did a great job. Jesse particularly did a great job running the event that they had over the Christmas holiday of the big tournament, the Fab Team Cup. Mm-hmm. But again, I'll put up the thing now. You can use a link at checkout when you go check out Travis's, and you can kick a little money my way too if you use my referral link. And do you have one as well for Savage Lands?
No, but I have like the Team Foundry affiliate link where some of the proceeds go back into our pocket for traveling to events and stuff like that. So I can give that to you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure to throw that below as well, and people can take their pick. Great.
Yeah.
So awesome. So I was going to ask then how you ended up on Brute if you came in at Monarch, but that actually makes sense. You started with Levia and went from there, right?
Yeah, it was Levia, and then like the first time I beat my store is really competitive, like brutally competitive. So the first time I took down, the reigning champion there, who I think he had been winning for 3, 4, 5 months in a row, like I really clicked with me that like I could do this. Um, but then obviously Tales of Aria came out, the biggest mistake of all time, and and Zero Cost Briar came out, and I went from being able to have a chance to just none. Right. So there I kind of had like this weird identity crisis where it's like I wanted to play Levia, it just wasn't going to work. So I experimented with like Viserai and Rhinar. And so Rhinar being better of the two brutes, especially at that point in time, in my opinion. So I would just bounce between the two, right? I could win events with Viserai, but I had more fun on Rhinar. And so I just kept like evolving my game plan until it was actually US Nationals where I always had Rhinar in my back pocket. He just always was there. Just the deck was sitting there. And I was practicing Dromai, and then Phi came out. It was like 50 something percent of US Nationals was Phi, and that's pretty much an auto loss on Dromai. So I dropped out of US Nationals, entered the calling, and just took Rhinar out. And I hadn't played him for like 4 or 5 months, and I got 14th place. And I was like, whoa, like maybe Rhinar's good right now again. Because I kind of made a commitment to my friends that I was like, I'm going to put Rhinar away, focus on good decks, stop bubbling out just at the end. And Rhinar was good, so I took him to the Worlds, and I hit top 8 in the calling at Worlds with Rhinar, and I was like, okay, there's something here right now. So then I just doubled my effort on focusing on Rhinar again, and now I'm on a tear, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that's an understatement brought to you by things such as quadruple intimidate for 17, which was your killing blow at Gongai. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite new plays. Epots, man, they're good.
Yeah. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you because you're right, you also did the calling. Now, obviously, that was before Dynasty, and there were some tricks that came out of Dynasty for sure. But when you're going around and doing a whole season worth of these events, I'm curious how much your list changes in between these various events you go to, and how do you decide on those changes? And I guess to put it in context, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and bring up your list, which is available to everyone because this is actually on fabtcg.com. If you go to events, you can search for him or search for Rhinar, and both of them will come up.
Yeah, I mean, my list changes all the time. I think like Rhinar's a mid-range deck, so it's like he's kind of has to answer what the community is doing instead of being what the community has to answer to. So like there is, in my opinion, Rhinar is not fast enough to set a precedent. So between each one of the callings, I did change my list several times. From US Nationals to Worlds to the callings, right? There's been quite a few evolutions of the deck. So I have like a sideboard stack, like legitimately like this big, that I carry around that is an answer to most of the decks in the room, right? So like when the first ProQuest I went to, I saw like 5 Kanos just sitting there. So immediately I made changes, right? It was like, okay, Oasis Respite's going to go in. I'm going to adapt a couple, a little bit more. There was a lot more Icelanders, some more Intimidates are going to go in. Remembrance goes in. So I do adapt basically every single time. And then I went down like the new cards pool, right? So Savage Beatdown, I really wanted to get that card to work. And I was really experimenting with that all the way up until the ProQuest, but it just didn't feel right. So I've nailed myself into this package you guys will see on the screen here, but every event I'm making like minor changes just because you have to have answers to what's in the room, right? And luckily I know most of the people in the Pacific Northwest, so like when I walk into a room, I'm kind of like, okay, there's a lot of Kanos, or there's a lot of Icelanders, or there's a lot of Oldens in this room. I can make those tiny adjustments to just give me that percentile benefit for the win,
I see. And you're making that basically on a gut feeling walking into the room that day before you submit the list?
Yeah, like, literally there's like 5-6 cards I'll take in or out just depending on how I feel that day too, or and who I see in the room, right? But this list is for the meta as it is right now. It's got answers to most of the best decks in it. Yeah.
Okay. So a question wasn't on my list, but to that point with walking in the room, some of the I think all 3 ProQuests in Portland area were right around 60. right? Give or
Yeah.
take a few people.
Yeah.
So, given the matchup basedness of that, Rhinar could, in theory, just run up against a really bad matchup early.
Oh, I did. Yeah, several
Oh,
times.
you did? Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, several times I ran into a 5 very early or a Briar or something along those lines, right? I mean, it's weird. I haven't really figured it out yet, but like Icelander is my worst matchup, which is weird because I think most Rhinars believe that they're favored into Icelander. But it's just the way I play. This version of Rhinar is so slow compared to like your standard Rhinar, right? Like I'm not running Pulpings or Wild Rides or Tear Limb from Limbs or like really any go again cards. So this one, you just have to play perfectly and be very patient because like I do have a positive win rate into basically every hero except for Icelander, but you just can't make a mistake whereas on some of those aggro decks they can make several mistakes, but Rhinar you just have to play perfectly, right? Every turn has to be like as advantageous as it possibly can be. But the idea is to get through the first 3 rounds and then bubble up towards all the ice decks, right? And just that's where you can kind of eat the old hymns and the decks that are trying to counter the meta, like Dorinthea and stuff like that. If you can make it through those first 3 rounds, you're typically mostly favored for the rest of the tournament. Except for the random Phi, right? That might show up.
Sure. Yeah, and selfish question, as a Dorinthea player myself, I've seen it go 2 very different ways. Which build of Dorinthea are you most scared to sit down against as a Rhinar player?
Any build that catches me off guard, probably. So, like standard Dawnblade Dorinthea, I'm very confident in because one of my testing partners is a Dory player. So it's like I've ran the gambit of Dory games. Any of the Dory decks that catches me off guard, like the Snatch Dory or the like the Go Again Saber's Dory or whatever that is. If I don't have the muscle memory into it, I'm a little bit more afraid. But like standard Dawnblade Dory, I'm okay into.
Okay, so that your standard like Warrior's Valor second swing type of deal, you're confident in that, but it's the weird stuff.
Still, yeah, it's like the one that just hits me with an erase face into a snatch into something else, and I'm like, I wasn't ready for this, like, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so with the new meta, I mean, about a week ago, actually, after of us shooting this, was the BNR, and
Yeah.
Oldham took the Ice Hammer ban, right?
Yeah.
So, and then there were some other changes, of course, that are not trivial. So how does that change things for you? Obviously, your deck's unaffected, but like you said, with the sideboard changes, that doesn't mean you're unaffected. So what's your plan?
Yeah, I mean, some people are saying that Rhinar is going to get hit from this because, there a lot of people think Rhinar is only winning because of the old hymns and the Icelanders at the top. Whereas, like, I was actually doing better typically into everybody else than I was into Icelander. So for me, Phi losing percentage points is huge, right? I'm already winning most of the time, and I'm just kind of scraping it by. So if they lose consistency, that's huge for me. Icelander being one of the hardest decks for me to beat in general, this is amazing for me. And then Oldhim, I already was winning mostly, and that's huge for me. So if Runeblades have a huge resurgence, Rhinar is going to fall out of the meta, right? But Briar doesn't have very long. So even if she becomes a problem, like, I took down 3 Briars over the course of these tournaments, and that's 100% of them that I faced. So I'm feeling pretty confident, weirdly. But, the new set's going to come out too, so that might disrupt everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, I meant, until that happens, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
So what changes do you, again, so we still have your list across the screen, so, just spitballing it, and you don't have to give any tech away if you don't want to, right? But just spitballing it, is there anything that you would be taking out? Like, are your remembrances still valuable if you think Oldham's going away? How does that all work?
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on what happens to, like, it's just some of those counter cards specifically, like Oasis Respite, I like a lot, but it has like a real reason it's there, mostly for wizards. Arg Smashes are there for dash. The D-React counts are there for Phi, right? So there's like, if they lose a lot of the meta share, then a lot of those cards can kind of go out, and I can focus on more aggression. Because right now, the one thing the list is lacking is aggression for the matchups like Icelander, where I just give them too much time. So it's hard to say, but like I think the list is really solid where it's at. It's like it feels like it's a generic answer to almost every deck out there. Like if you play patiently. So maybe some Savage Beatdowns in the sideboard so I can have that like, just Blood Rush 14, double in Tim, but I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So in the semis at Gongai, we actually already referred to it, but in the semis against Gongai against an Oldhim player, Natan, who's a fantastic player, right?
Yeah, he's good.
You pulled off a quad Intimidate Alpha Rampage. So
Yes.
I'm curious, in a deck like Rhinar, how do you successfully actually set up that combo? Because I'm assuming you had to pitch deck that to make it work, right?
So normally normally I do pitch stack them. So like very early against Oldhim specifically, I know that like Alpha Rampages and Barraging Beatdowns are how I'd probably win. Like there's two ways I win an Oldhim game. It's with Reckless Swing or Alpha Rampage, right? One of those two will close the game, and then my only other objective is to Blood Rush 3 times perfectly, and Remembrance is a recent addition in case things don't go well, right? So if I mess up a Blood Rush, it was mostly for Icelander why Remembrance came back, because I was just tired of getting hypothermiaed on my Blood Rush turn, so I wanted to Blood Rush 6 times and just say, hey, you can't answer all of them, right? But then I used it against Oldhim, mostly because I took yellow Barragings out. I just needed deck space to have this many answers. So I replaced 3 yellow Barragings with 1 Remembrance. So it just saved me 2 slots. The first time I played it into an Oldhim, it was like mind-blowing, right? Like now I just Blood Rush 5 times. They can't survive that much damage. It's just too much anti-block, But against Natan, I didn't quite pitch stack it because I had the Remembrance. Because I needed to get that 0 block out of my deck. But what I did do is pitch the 2 Alpha Rampages to the bottom, the 2 red Barragings to the bottom, and then I had put the second or the third copy of each card back in, and I only had like 20 something cards left. So it was bound to show up, right? And so that's what I was playing for. And that's what Epot's for too, right? I did that off 4 cards, which normally you can't afford to do that. So Tunic and Epot paid for the Alpha Rampage entirely. So it was just waiting until I could set that up. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice, very awesome. So do you have any other? I mean, are those the main ones? It's just your Blood Rush and then try to swing for the feds. Is that those are the main plays in the deck?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this deck is basically that, right? It is, it's pure value. Every single thing I'm doing is blocking the most effectively I can and having cards that answer, and then swinging 6 or 8 or whatever, right? And then it's Blood Rushing perfectly 3 times, and you'll see that like 3 sigils, 2 tomes. I'm also trying to heal because 2 Blood Rush with a minimum of 3 cards, it means I have to take damage, most likely the turn before. So I'm trying to stay as high as I can health-wise, so when I see a Blood Rush, I can eat 10 and do 20. And if I do that 3 times perfectly, any deck that is in the format right now will have to start blocking. And once you get Fi to block or Briar to block, Rhinar is actually better at trading than they are at those levels.
Sure.
Because you can cheat with like a pitch of blue and a Fendals, and you can swing for 9 off 1 blue, and no other class can do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, well, hey, let's before we forget, why don't you tell us about Savage Lands News, which is you've been going on for about 6 months or so. Is that about right?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's been 6. I think it's been I would say I don't know, 3 months. Yeah, it just started off as a place for me to put brute content up because there aren't that many Rhinar players really who are making content. There's a handful of people who find Rhinar as a passion, but they don't attempt to play it at a high level. So I just wanted to throw up content and kind of have that brutish mentality, right? Kind of fun, news oriented. And I plan on expanding out, doing a lot more than just Rhinar content, kind of meta content. And I like the interview process like we're doing now. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We'll see if I can get better at it and evolve it over time. But I post all of my links there. Every one of the lists I ran, I gave it out before the event, so people knew what I was bringing too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I first found you after your calling performance, the World's Calling performance. That's where I first found you, and I've been watching since, and it's very interesting. I don't know how long you've been following my stuff or not, but My wife and I picked up the game together, and we couldn't get Brute to work early, and we've just never really gone back since. So it's very interesting to try and learn the other side of that coin, because he's becoming very relevant again, largely because of you, to be honest. So
Rhinar is complicated. Like, a lot of people think he's like this dice rolling, no thought deck, but actually I would put Rhinar as one of the harder, not the hardest. Like, I think Icelander is probably the hardest deck, but one of the hardest decks to play well, because every turn you have to like pitch. You have to bet that you might hit a 4, you might hit a 6. When do you do that? When is it willing to sacrifice a 1? And the class like really wants you to be greedy, but as soon as you are greedy on Rhinar, you start to lose. So it's like it's this weird balancing, right? And I think you have to block better with Rhinar than basically any other class. Like, you have to know when the snatch is coming, when the on hits are matter. How many cards can I keep for Blood Rush? That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, a couple other questions for you. So Beast Within, where do you fall on that card?
So every one of we have like a Discord of all of the Brute players that have like done well internationally, and I right before your event, I was like, yo, I'm taking Beast Within out. This card sucks. Like, I've died to it so many times. Like, and then lo and behold, at your event, the loss I had against that Icelander, I perfect lethaled myself with Beast Within, of course. It's a weird one because I remember every time it killed me, but I probably don't remember every time it helped me out and got me a win. So I'm starting to actually write this down. Like, there was a game against Fi that it won for me at Mr. Bill's, but then there was 2 events that it killed me. So it's like I'm gonna start tracking that better and see how much I really want to have this like wild card in my hand, right? Mm-hmm. Especially because I cut the 6 ratio down. Like, I am probably one of the lowest 6 ratio Rhinars out there. Like, I'm at the bottom of what I have so many non-6s. So like, I average like 3 health lost on that card, and I typically beat Fies with like 1 to 3 health. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I might cut it soon.
Yeah, fair enough. What would you be looking at to backfill it with?
Any yellow that doesn't have a discard. So right now there's only one left, and that's Pack Call. I really want them to give me another yellow. Right now discarding just doesn't seem worth it, unfortunately. Like, you're doing 6 for -2 cards, which is really, really bad, Mm-hmm. So any yellow 6 that doesn't discard is what we're doing.
Got it. Yeah, fair enough. All right, and then have you tried Rhinar and Commoner? What are your thoughts there?
I've never played Commoner once.
Okay.
I haven't tried it. If I did, I would play Rhinar and Commoner. I'm playing Rhinar and Blitz this skirmish season. Mm-hmm. He is wild right now in Blitz. It's kind of dumb. Yeah, I could try Commoner.
Yeah, I don't think he was very good until Dynasty, but I think Madcap Charger is actually pretty good in Commoner, right?
I could see that. Yeah, I mean it's 3 cards for 11, which is like pretty okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So actually, I think it's 10, right? Isn't Madcap Charger a 5, and then you get 5 off the club? I think.
Oh yeah, you're right.
But either way, yeah.
3 for 10 with an Intimidate, which is like not terrible. It's still pretty below rate, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a Commoner though, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'd be interesting to see what you could do with that. I know there's a Commoner Crawl event coming up soon.
I'll try it. I've never even thought about what Rhinar would look like. I mean, without Blood Rush and Swing Big, I'm afraid, but I can try it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. I don't think he was very good before, but
yeah,
he got some new tools. But
yeah, Club is really good. So if I could figure it out.
Yep, Club is good. But yeah, you primarily play Claws, right?
Yeah, I used to play only Club, and then I went only Claws, and I just haven't gone back. Claw, like, just for me, it's like I treat it like a combo deck. It's just like OTK Viscerai back when I played that. It's like I have one goal, and it's to Blood Rush, and it's the Blood Rush for 20, and that's the only thing I'm trying to do the entire game until it's like time to close, So
got it. I mean, makes sense, and clearly it's working.
Yeah.
For now.
For now, until somebody decides they need to counter Rhinar. The day that happens, I'm going to be upset. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, what's next for you?
I need to learn how to draft. So, my ELO rating is like incredibly high, and then my draft is actually negative. So, like, I'm ranked like 8,000 in the world in draft. So I need to figure that out if I want to do well at any of these real events, right? Because right now I know that like I can drop out and do the calling, and then, but I want to, I don't want to just day two. I want to like day two and maybe make it, right? Like I want to push for a big event, top eight, and that requires skills that I don't have right now. So that's really my focus is I'm gonna figure out drafting. I'm gonna like memorize that set, and I'm gonna go in there like trying to win instead of trying to get day two and drop.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So are you traveling to Indy this weekend or anything like that, or?
No, I'm taking a little bit of a break. I'm gonna be focusing on draft, like I said. I want to get ready for Pro Tour, right? It'll be my first Pro Tour. So I'm excited. I wanna do well at that event. And then worst case scenario, I'll go play Rhinar and the Battle Hardened or the Calling. But I wanna try and top eight the PT if I could.
Nice. Well, best of luck. And based on your
Yeah.
performance this last week, it's looking good, but things will be different.
Yeah. The whole outsider set, yeah. Hopefully Assassin's good. I really like that class also.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Did you see that somebody got two PT or excuse me, ProQuest wins with?
I saw that, yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, I watched the interview and it was cool. It requires a little bit of help, but I really like that. I like classes that block, so Assassin's all up in my alley, right? We'll see the stealth mechanic, the new frailty tokens. It looks like they're getting some support, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Cool. Well, all right. Before we wrap it up, why don't you again let everybody know where they can find you and give any shout outs you want to give and anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, thanks for hosting the event. It was super fun. Thanks to all of the people in Portland who put these events together and Seattle, right? It's really cool. Got to hang out with everybody and play a lot of good games. But I'm Savage Lands News on YouTube. I'm part of Team Foundry, so you can find both of our channels up there. They're posting up some of my games from these ProQuest these last couple of days, so it should be fun. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today. I thought it was really fun watching you play. That's why I really wanted to talk to you, because I got to watch you play at the top tables for, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 games. Yeah. I got to stand there over your shoulder creepily and peek at your cards. Right? But no, It was really great watching that, and I'm very impressed. Like I said, my experience with Brute has not been good. Just doesn't fit my play style, and you're very effective with it, and I'm very impressed. So thanks for taking the time, and congrats on
thank you so
done.
much. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yep. Well, again, thank you for coming, and you got to say it with me. Oh, actually, and if anybody has any questions for him, you can either find him at Savage Land News. I'll obviously have a link below, or you can put it below, and we'll try and get you the answers. And again, congrats, thank you, and say it with me. Go Commando.
Go Commando.
Nice. Thanks, man.